Okay, it is 1:02 here on the East Coast. Our trusted moderator, Andrew Morgan, will not be with us today. He is on Right of Boom business. So it's up to myself and Chip to take us through today's SaaS y MSP call. We have two agenda items today. The first one is having a special guest on who's going to bring us through a problem that all of our end users have, but not specific to their corporate life, actually to their personal life. So something that I think I found really interesting. I think you will too. Hopefully you will. And then we have a real treat for those attending today. So we generally don't like to share product information this far out on certain modules, but this one we feel is going to be such a game changer. We wanted to share it with you all and get some feedback. So we've already shared what's coming out with Unify a little bit, and that's the product launch on the 19th. So I'm not going to give any more away from that because we want all of you attending that launch event, which, by the way, we're really looking forward to. We got a ton of people signed up for. That's again on the 19th. If you haven't signed up for that, please do so. Michelle, if you can throw that registration link in the chat, that'll be fantastic. There it is. Thank you, Michelle. So that's taken care of, but we've got something coming out in August that we want to talk through with all of you. And as usual, we're going to include it initially without any incremental fee to you, our valued partners. And all of you, by the way, are extremely valued because you're the ones that are coming on this call every single week and giving us your time, giving us your feedback, and your participation in making SaaS Alerts better every single week. So we thank you for that. So with that being said, Chip, you have anything that you want to highlight before we get things kicked off? Chip, you might be on mute. Or he just left the call altogether, which I found doubtful, but I don't know. Okay, so with that being said, I'm just going to throw it over to our guest today. So this individual came to me a couple months ago, and I was super impressed with his background. He's a former Google guy, former military guy, really well versed in cybersecurity, and I loved his overall presentation. And after the conversation, I said, you know what? I think a lot of our MSPs could find what you're talking about really valuable as they talk to their customers about what they do in their personal lives relative to their personal environments, right? Like every one of your customers, yes, of course, have a 365 account for work and whatever, but they also have a personal email account. They do a lot of what they do digitally in the ether. So what are the best ways to potentially protect those folks? Because there's becoming a lot of crossover, right, between what folks are doing at work and what people are doing at home. So I felt like this might be a good opportunity to bring Tate Jarrow into the conversation and have him share some information with us. So I'm going to allow Tate to do his own introduction because I was really impressed with his background. So Tate, don't leave anything out. I'll hand it over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. Hi, everybody. I'm Tate Jarrow. Happy to be here and appreciate the invite. If I don't know if I have presentation permission, if someone can throw that to me, I'll throw something up. If not, no big deal. But yeah, my background, I started my career in the Army as an infantry officer, and then I continued government service in the Secret Service, where I was a special agent, and I cut my chops on cybercrime, and I did cybercrime investigation here in New York, which is where I'm based, for 6.5 years, and really started to understand and gain a great understanding of how bad guys operate, what they exploit, how they win, and what that looks like when an organization is dealing with an incident from a bad actor. Because I investigated it, collected the evidence, and then prosecuted and brought consequence against the bad actors. After my government time, I did an MBA from Cornell, and then I went over to Google. And for the first half of my 4.5 years at Google, I did behind the scenes security things. And then the second half, I pivoted into a product facing side, and I joined our internal startup incubator, where I built a consumer focused cybersecurity product with the hypothesis that people need more skills and understanding and help to protect themselves. And this is really important. And it's not just about protecting them on Google, it's about protecting them just like we protect enterprises in a 360-degree perspective. And so I created this startup within Google, got funded, and then I got acquired by bigger Google into Google One, and I ran advanced privacy and security products at Google One for subscription. I've since left, and now I'm doing a couple things. I'm consulting in this space. I'm advising several startups in the cybersecurity space, and I'm looking to start my own startup. And I'm still in stealth mode, but with a focus on individual cybersecurity. So there's two reasons why everyone should care about individual cybersecurity or personal cybersecurity. Number one is it's really painful when we or someone we care about become victims. And most of us probably have been a victim at some point. And if not, I'm sure that you will. I mean, it's far more likely you'll be a victim of cybercrime than you will any other crime in your life, particularly if you're in the United States or in a Western country. And so we should care from that perspective. And then the other reason we should care is that individual risk is now enterprise risk. If you think about enterprise cybersecurity and evolution over time, it started with we have to secure the enterprise. We have to secure our endpoints. We have to secure our network. And that was, the early days of enterprise cybersecurity. And then I say when the Target hack happened, which I think was 2013-ish, we realized that your vendors and the systems that you communicate with are also vulnerabilities that an enterprise has to worry about. And then with COVID, with work from home, we have started to realize that individuals and what they're doing at home on their personal online digital lives, that also puts the enterprise at risk. And so individual risk is a big part of the equation for the enterprise, and it's a big part of the equation for each of us just living in the world of the internet. And so that's what I'm really focused on. I also think that it's a big gap in investment. If you think about, if my mom loses $50,000 in a romance scam, nobody's investigating that. The FBI doesn't care. Local police don't have the capabilities. And what do these victims do? And the answer is they suffer harm and really have no help. And so I am really interested in changing that. One of the ways we can do that is through education and awareness. And so that's kind of why I wanted to come out here today, to let you know, this is actually not hard. It's pretty easy to communicate, and it's really important. And I think that the more that people are thinking about these things, the better it is for us as individuals, for us as enterprises, and for society in general.
So Tate, I just want to make sure you have a presentation, right? So if you have a presentation, you can put it up now. And for those that listen to Tate's introduction and his background, I don't know if you were thinking the same thing I was when I first met Tate. He's young enough to look like he just graduated from high school. So how did you do all of this in such a short period of time? That's what I was thinking anyway. So So Tate, please continue.
Yes, I don't know if I can show you the PowerPoint. I think I'm not seeing the ability to do that,
You
but that's okay.
you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah. I can make you a co-host, but yeah, you definitely should have those rights.
All right. Well, I'm not a great Zoom user, but let me see if I can.
I know you're probably Mr. Google.
Yeah, I am used to Google. I don't want to waste people's time,
So if you
we'll
just go to
see.
share screen, then you'll see a bunch of different windows.
Down at the bottom.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. That was a little embarrassing. All right. Give me 2 more seconds while I pick the right window. All right. Okay, 5 more seconds. So the preamble here is, if this works, and if it doesn't, like I said, we're just gonna go for it. Okay, there we go. All right, so basically, this is going to be a 5-minute or less lesson that personal cybersecurity can be really, really simple. One of the problems in this space is that it can seem daunting and overwhelming because there's so many different risks. They change all the time, and it can feel like you have to be an expert to know how to protect yourself. But what I want to tell you today and share is that really it's just 3 things that you can focus on, and you can reduce the vast majority of your risk from cyber harm. And this is for you, this is for your family members, for everybody. And the 3 things are accounts, devices, and your identity. If you focus on these 3 things, those are the basics, and the basics are the most important. So those are the 3 main asset types. And then the second thing is the concept of your crown jewels. So just like in the enterprise system, we want to protect the most important things. That's how we should think about it on our personal lives as well. What are the assets? What are the accounts? What are the devices? What are the parts of your identity and privacy that will cause you the most harm if a bad actor got access to them? Those things are your crown jewels. And this is how we make hundreds of accounts more manageable from a risk perspective. Because my target.com account, if that gets hacked, that's far less harm than my Gmail account that I use every day and is linked to photos and things like that. So understanding what your crown jewels are is a really helpful way to make this easier for anybody. And so examples of crown jewels, this is going to be different for everybody, but some things to think about. Probably your primary email that you use for work or communicate with friends and family. Financial accounts where you have money, things like social media accounts where you have sensitive data and connections, and certainly an iCloud account, a Google account linked to photos and documents and location, browsing history. These things, this is very sensitive information that could be used by a bad actor in a variety of ways. So certainly I would classify those as crown jewels. And then one that a lot of people don't think about, which is important, is your mobile phone account. Verizon or AT&T, whatever it might be. And the reason why is because if a bad actor can hack your Verizon account, they can steal your phone number in what is called a SIM swap, and then that can be used to defeat SMS multi-factor authentication. So treating that account as a crown jewel to protect it is really important to protect everything else. Devices, one way to think about a device that's a crown jewel is probably your cell phone, but really it's anything that accesses one of your other crown jewels. I would qualify that as a crown jewel device. And then your identity is things like your name, your phone number, your email address, where you live, your location, family members, things that if a bad actor could find about you, they could hack you, they could show up, they could harass you. These are the crown jewels of identity. So for each one, I'm just going to give you the top 3 things that you should do for each of these 3 areas. And remember, it's easy. It's just accounts, devices, and identity. So number 1 is for accounts. Every account should have a strong and unique password. And to do this, everybody should be using a password manager because it can't be unique like I add a 1 or a 2 at the end of a common phrase. It needs to be completely unique. And the reason for this is bad actors exploit all these password dumps that are out there. And they count on the fact that a high percentage of people are using the same password with multiple accounts. And so your password is known if you're reusing it. And that's a vulnerability for you. So strong and unique. And then the second thing for accounts is every account should have, especially your crown jewels, should have multi-factor authentication, SMS, authenticator app, hardware token. And then finally, know what the recovery options are for your accounts. And what I mean by this is if you click forget password, what happens? If it sends an email, if I have a bank account and I click forget password and it sends me an email, then that email needs to be secure also. Because if that email gets compromised, then the bad actor can use that to access that bank account. So that's what I mean by know and secure the recovery options that are linked to your crown jewel accounts. So that's it for accounts, pretty simple. And again, it doesn't need to be every account. Focus on the crown jewels. Okay, so devices, pretty similar. Your devices should have a strong password. So if you lose your device or it's stolen, a bad actor can't just open it and get access. What I tell people is on a phone, it should be at least 6 digits. And the longer, the better. 8 digits is better than 6, and alphanumeric is better than digits. And use the biometrics, fingerprint or Face ID. These are more secure. And then the digit passcode is a backup. But you absolutely have this. And then along with this, you want to enable Find My iPhone. So if you do lose your phone or it's stolen, you can wipe it or remote lock it or locate it. And this is really important, right? Because I don't need to hack your accounts if I can get your unlocked phone. I own, anybody's phone that I get unlocked, I own their entire life. And then finally, it's really important to have auto update turned on for the operating system software and the app store. And this is because software vulnerabilities, as most of us are probably aware, are found all the time, and bad actors exploit them constantly in order to gain access to systems that have not updated their software. And this happens on the enterprise, and it happens with people's personal devices. And the best way to guard yourself from that is turning on auto update and get those patches automatically. So that's it for devices. Those 4 things will protect the basics of your device. And then finally, your identity. The principle here is that your identity, like I said before, is how a bad actor can target you and find the pieces of information that allow them to social engineer you, social engineer someone close to you, hack your accounts, harass you, dox you, or even show up at your house. And so protecting this information is really important. And what I recommend is these 4 things to start with. And I could talk for hours about this in general, but number 1, protect your name. Anytime you put your name somewhere, you're creating a record where your name is now tied to a bunch of other information. And so if you don't need your full name for a legal reason, don't use it. So for example, I signed up for OpenTable, right, the restaurant reservation app. I use an alias because they don't need to know my real name. Or use your initials. So protect your name. The second thing is protect your email. What I say, you have a primary email that you're using for your business and personal business, and then get a secondary email account and use that for all of these account signups. So that way, when whatever random, OpenTable gets hacked and their user database gets dumped, and there's a username and a password and a phone number and a name, that stuff is not, the email that now hackers have access to and is out there in the wild. That email is your secondary email, and it's not the primary one that you use for your communication and is tied to your sensitive information. So that's what I mean by protect your email. Because if a bad actor can't find your email that is tied to the most sensitive of your information, then they can't hack you, right? And the same goes for your phone number. If you want to avoid spam phone calls and bad phishing messages and all that stuff, get a VoIP number, Google Voice, or there's lots of apps that do this. And when you sign up for accounts or you put your phone number as a contact information, use a secondary number. So when that information gets out there, it's hacked or it's bought and sold for marketing purposes, it's not the primary phone number that you text your friends and family with. And then finally, always check your privacy settings, because lots of apps, lots of accounts will put your personal information out there, and it's part of, they're doing it on purpose, or they're doing it as part of the service. And what I tell people is you should be comfortable with the privacy settings for these services willfully, you should be willing to go with what the privacy settings are. So whenever you sign up for an account or download an app, go to privacy and check the settings and make sure you're comfortable with them, especially for social media, but also things like Venmo. Famously Venmo, it used to be by default, every transaction you did on Venmo was public, which anybody could see. And that's not really a great privacy thing. So check your privacy settings. A lot of stuff we give up by accident because we don't even know that there's an option to turn it off. So that's it. Secure your accounts, your devices, and your identity. I think it's a really easy way to frame it. It's the beginning of how I think about online safety. I guess my call to action here is I really believe that all of us, everyone we care about, our employees, our business partners, our families, and ourselves should be safe. And I don't think it's hard. And that's what I'm motivated by. So if I can be helpful to you or your organization, I'm happy to have that conversation. You can see my email here. You can find me at my website. I have a blog where I talk about all these different tips. That's at Substack. But yeah, really happy to have a conversation. I also do in-person classes or virtual classes. And in an hour, I can cover the basics. And at a minimum, everyone should have the basics. And I think that's really important. So Jim, thanks for the time. I hope I didn't go too far over. Really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, Tate, I actually have a question. So you're right. This stuff isn't hard. It's just time consuming, right? And that's usually where the rubber meets the road. People don't want to put the time in. So you said you do online classes for folks. Are those free classes? Do you charge for them? How does that work?
Yeah, well, in general, I try to charge for my time. It depends on what the audience is. I work with some nonprofits, so those things are different than if a corporation was going to bring me in to help with their employees. And so I guess I should say it depends on what the engagement looks like and what makes sense. What makes sense.
Got it. What if an MSP wanted to offer a service to their customers and say, hey, look, we've got a webinar that is available to all of you to better protect your personal online identities?
Yeah, I'm more than open to that. I think I'd be happy to do that. That would be something that I'd charge a fee for, but I'm happy to partner with an MSP that thinks that could be a value add to their offering for their clients. Absolutely happy to talk about that. And just saw in the chat that my website is not working. That's a good note. I'll have to debug that after this meeting. But the email does work, so you can just email me there if you're interested.
Okay, great. Anyone have questions for Tate? Okay, Lori's got a question. Lori, you're on mute.
I have one.
Okay.
Tate, great information. So when you're giving your talks, are you reselling any type of service to anybody then? And what other type of services are you offering your clients or the people that you're speaking to?
So I am, it's a sales neutral education. I have recommendations for products from a personal perspective that I think are helpful, but I'm not selling anything in an educational type webinar at this time. So yeah, it would just be about the objective that if this is something that's interesting to you, we'd want to think about what the objectives are and what you think is helpful. But from my perspective, it's not about selling a service that I'm offering at this time.
Got it. And then someone else asked, password manager, is LastPass still okay? I personally, when I use LastPass, it makes me nervous that they've had multiple breaches in like the last 6 months. The higher order question here is people innately do not trust password managers because it's like, I'm giving these people this service all of my information, and it makes me really nervous to do that because if they get hacked, what happens? And I totally understand that. And so
I have a blog where I talk about this. I'll put a link in, but I think the way to think about password managers is what risk are you worried about? And if you're worried about like, hey, my passwords are in the cloud and a bad actor will hack them and get access to them, there are solutions where all your passwords are stored locally and they never go in the cloud. So they're encrypted only on your device. And the only way that actor gets those is to, hack in your device and malware in your device and then get into your encrypted container. So, I use something called NPass, ENPASS, because it stores locally and it syncs locally. I can sync on my local Wi-Fi because I also share the concern, if LastPass or whoever has a vulnerability in their cloud, I don't want that to create risk for me. But we all have different risk profiles. And like I said, my blog talks about this, like for my mom, I tell her, if you want to write your passwords on a postcard, that's fine. Like, because unless someone breaks into your house to read your passwords, like you're totally safe from a hacker and you trust, my dad who's not going to hack your account. But for many of us, that doesn't make sense, right? So it just depends on what your individual risk profile is in terms of what password manager makes sense. That was a really long answer. Like I said, I could talk about this for a long time.
Great. Thank you, Tate. And apparently your website is working as long as you put www in front of it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Tate, thank you. Appreciate it. And again, thanks for your service. So now we turn to the second half of today's program, which is a sneak peek at a module that we call Fortify. So, we're releasing Unify on the 19th of April. We're releasing Fortify late this summer. And we've got a team that's been working on it. Leron Barron is going to walk us through it with commentary from Chip Bucker, CTO. And we'd love to get feedback as we go through. So you don't have to wait to the end. If you have questions, please post them in chat. Leron, take it away.
Thanks, Jim.